a lot of my friends that were like bro hammer shortboarders, no matter what the conditions, they're on a thruster. Some of them would get like mid-lengths or get like a 6.6 egg or, single fin. And you'd start to see it smooth out their surfing. You start to see them go, oh, like now I'm like rising and falling and I'm using the rail more. And when they bring that back to the shortboard, it's like, whoa, like new dimension opened.
All right. Welcome to the Basis Surf Podcast. Super excited. We got Chris, owner of Pilgrim Surf Supply. If you live in Brooklyn, you probably heard of it, or you live in New York City. It's one of the pillars of the New York surf community. That's probably one of the things I love the most about Pilgrim is the community it brings. Any of you New York surfers that haven't stopped by Pilgrim, definitely make sure to come by. Throws tons of events. It's always a good time. And probably has one of the most diverse, eclectic, and incredible collection of boards in that shop. So if you're interested in feeling up some pretty trippy or amazing surfboards, definitely want to stop by. But he's also a filmmaker, designer, artist. If you ever want to go deep on surfboards, just stop by the shop and chat him up. And yeah, you'll probably get a mini history lesson. And so very, very excited. Chris, thanks for joining, man.
Oh, thanks for having me, Van. I think we met over one of those lengthy, maybe too lengthy, nerdy board design chats.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I think that's how we met.
Yeah.
I remember your junior purchase.
Yeah. And I remember you feeding me many beers. And then all of a sudden, next thing I knew, I had a beautiful, shiny surfboard in my possession. And,
It's a technique.
Worked out.
It's a technique. I've learned from some good, from the best.
That's the way to do it. That's the way to do it.
Beer is the way to your wallet.
That is the way. Well, so obviously we're going to get into a ton of stuff. We want to get into, you've felt up, you've surfed so many different boards. We want to talk about all that. I want to talk about some of the shapers that you have come through, doing residency programs with you. And I also want to get into the film that you made, and all the things you've learned. But why don't we start from the beginning? How did you get into surfing? What's the beginning of the story?
I started surfing when I was 9. That's when I really caught my first wave, and I grew up in Rhode Island, in the southern part of Rhode Island. And my uncle was a surfer. He started surfing in the early '60s in Rhode Island. He was sort of my father figure in my life. He was the guy that I looked up to the most, and if you met him, you would instantly love him. He's just a big teddy bear of a guy. And always laughing, great human. So I was enamored by him and anything he did, and he surfed. I had some other people, stepbrothers that were, kind of into it, dabbled in it, but were also skaters. But I think I came to surfing kind of and skateboarding sort of around the same time. And at that time, surf and skate was sort of, I think, a little bit more closely aligned than it is now. If you lived near waves and you surfed, you almost definitely skated. And if you skated, you almost definitely surfed if you're near a coastline. So yeah, it was kind of like the 80s wave was happening. And it's really cold in Rhode Island, obviously in the winter months. So at the time, our surfing was really limited to summertime. It was like a summertime activity. They didn't make wetsuits that were warm enough for me, for my size.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, a fun thing that I did in the summertime for a few years. And then I just, got deeper and deeper into skateboarding. And then I moved to South Florida with my mother. I went to high school there and got a lot more access to waves then. It's always been in my life since a pretty early age. And I think I got introduced to some pretty interesting aspects of it early on, through understanding the connection back to skateboarding. And also, I think I was lucky to go through an era when the VHS camera and camcorder tape kind of revolution happened. And yeah, my friends and myself, we would go and rent the surf movie that just came out from the surf and skate shop, or the skate movie, go home and religiously watch it, and then try to emulate it,
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we were absolutely uh, enchanted by surfing and skating when I was a kid. And I think the scarcity and access to constant good surf was something that maybe made it even more special, and
Mm.
more desirable, and something that was just kind of on our minds more
Yeah,
than I think it would have been if I'd lived in California or Hawaii, maybe. I don't know.
for sure. We were chatting about that in the water the other day, right? Like we're I have that friend that just moved to Hawaii. He shoots for John John, and he basically, since leaving New York, he like misses surfing in New York somehow, even though the waves are way worse, But it's that froth energy. He was texting me. He was like, "Yeah, I miss waking up before sunrise, like just checking the buoys and wondering if we're going to score, and then that getting all caffeinated and driving in the dark, and then." Like maybe you score, maybe you don't score, but it's this kind of mission, and it just gets there's that excitement and froth that builds up that you don't get when you just like, oh, I'm gonna walk out the door and just see if there's a wave outside, right? So
Yeah, it's true. I have friends that live like on the beach, even in Rockaway, and a lot of them are I'm not going to surf right now. I'm going to wait till later. And they're really picky about when they surf, and they don't surf as much, maybe, or they don't surf in these like longer, kind of concentrated um, sessions or periods of time. It's like, oh, I got 3 waves. I'm going to go in, come back out later. But then we all know what happens here. The wind switches, the tide comes up, and it's gone. So
yeah,
yeah, it is a mission too. I mean, when you live in the city, and you live, don't live it, on the beach at Rockaway, it is a mission. Like every time you surf feels like a little mini road trip.
yeah,
Um, Even though it's like 11 miles away, it could take you an hour and a half.
yeah,
Um, so there is a commitment thing there. It's almost like, God damn it, I'm going to have fun. I don't care how bad it's going to be, or if the wind comes up, or if the tide changes or whatever. It's like, well, I'm going. So,
right.
I'm going to get what I get.
There's a
Yeah.
there's a beauty to it. I mean, in a way, it's not quite that extreme, but it's almost like in the land before Surfline, when you just like people just go to the beach. They don't know if there's waves, but you just hope that there's waves, and you just surf whatever's there, right? And I'm assuming like you knew that time period, right?
I
So
mean, I'm old enough to remember, just getting up and listening to the marine radio and hearing which way the wind was blowing, and what the period was like at the buoy. Um, and then, Surfline is called Surfline because it used to have phone numbers that you could call in and get regional forecasts.
wow,
Um, and you paid, whatever the charge was that they paid you, that they charged you when you made the call. And they were totally inaccurate on the East Coast. I mean, horribly bad, to the point that it gained the nickname Surfly.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and then we also, I mean, a lot has changed. And then we'd also have our local shops that would have reports. And I worked at a surf shop when I was a kid, a surf and skate shop, and I had friends that worked at other shops, and it was a notorious thing to undercall the conditions or just completely like get it wrong. Oh, wind on shore. I mean, be perfect. It was kind of a
yeah,
joke, depending on whose shop it was. But there was, really like a coconut wireless kind of thing too. Your friend that lived at the beach, you'd call them, and then,
right,
they'd give you the report, and you have eyes and ears in different ways. But yeah, it was really different. Uh, it wasn't as exposed, and I think, you know, I posted about the kind of the origin of our name on Instagram not long ago, and a guy from Rhode Island who I don't know like hit me up, um, you know, in a nice way, and was kind of um, giving me a little bit of a hard time for spot burning Point Judith, and I just wrote him
uh,
back and said, look, man, that's the last thing in the world I would ever do. I'm also not a gatekeeper, and when Surfline puts a camera on a break, it's over.
right, right,
It's over. Like
yeah,
there's no more like hiding or trying to to keep something special in the secret. Although there's a lot of other spots in the zone that I would never in a million years mention publicly that are special and still
Right.
there for the people who know about it, know when it works, know what it takes, weather-wise and swell direction-wise to make some spots work. And, that's for people to figure out, as they dedicate themselves more and more to it, I think. But
Hey everyone, my name is Van, and I'm an everyday surfer that's just obsessed with improving. And I wanted to take everything that I've learned, everything that I've struggled with, all the mistakes that I've learned along the way, and share it with you to help you become the best surfer that you can be. And I'm super lucky on this podcast, I get to interview the world's top pros, shapers, coaches, and take you along on my journey as I try to learn, uncover all the gold so you can apply to your own surfing. So hopefully you're going to get some value out of this. And the best way you can support me is just simply by sharing this podcast with whoever else you think may benefit from it. I also have been working really hard for a long time on something that I think is going to help a ton of people. I know that it was a game changer for myself as well. More to come on that over the next coming months. I'm super excited. Thank you for all the support. And for those of you just joining for the first time, welcome to the Basis community. Super stoked to have you. Right. Well, so why don't you just, what is the exact origin story about, with your name? I mean, I think it's pretty apparent, but if there's any more color to it that you want to add.
No, I mean, it's kind of just a simple thing. When we were trying to figure out a name for our brand, I mean, there's just so many names of so many things that are kind of, it's like on the nose. We didn't want to call ourselves something that was incredibly obvious that we were adjacent to surf. We wanted it to come from something that felt genuine, that had integrity. And a friend of mine just said to me one day, well, what was the name of the spot where you caught your first wave? And I went, the first wave that I really could truly say I was surfing when I was going down the line was at Pilgrim Ave. Mm. And then I was like, oh shit, that word is, packed with metaphoric possibilities, like surfers are pilgrims, travel all over the world, even in our local little zones, to go to these very special places and have this kind of, if you choose for it to be kind of a spiritual moment, like sitting in the ocean, riding the frequencies from the earth. Right. So I thought that had a lot of meaning. It was kind of loaded. And so it comes from the name of that street, which is obviously named after the Calvinist, pilgrims in Plymouth, which we don't want to associate ourselves with. But it was sort of the spark that gave us that initial idea to call ourselves that. And I think a lot of what I was explaining is I started thinking about how when you're passionate about something, you take pilgrimages to places where, something may have started, or, if you're a climber, you have to go and climb Yosemite. You have to go to these places where it's sort of the birthplace, Waikiki. You might want to ride a stage of like one of the classics in the Tour de France if you're a cyclist. There are these things that have deep meaning that when you go and experience them, and you can kind of imagine like the energy and the people that kind of forged the way for you to be doing what you're doing. We're there doing it where you're doing it. Every time I sit in Malibu, I think about Bob Simmons and Joe Quigg, like sliding across that spot. They were right there, Mm-hmm. The fathers of the modern surfboard, Matt Kivlin, it's like they were all surfing that wave. When you go to Waikiki, it's even heavier. And you think about like the Duke, and you think about all the ancient Hawaiian surfing, that was going on right there where you're sitting in the water. There's something to that. So that was sort of the idea. Like, let's celebrate that. That aspect of these passions that we have.
Yeah, I've always thought it's such a beautiful name. I didn't know that this was actually the street that you just, got your first wave until more recently. And I was like, wow, that's such this beautiful kind of synchronicity between the two. Because I just thought the name was beautiful, and then it just, it worked out perfectly for you.
Well, most pilgrims are kind of, well, when you're on a pilgrimage, it's a humbling kind of moment. at least it's supposed to be, right? And then you're faced with a lot of humility, and you have to rely on other people to kind of help you get to where you're going. That's something I think that's truly unique to the surfing journey too, because it's really really hard to learn,
Yeah.
especially when you're older and later in life. And I think you and I have talked about that a bunch. And I think that's what your podcast is centered around, is kind of helping people who have come to this like later in life and are trying to figure it out. When you're a kid, it's like you give a 5-year-old anything, a ball, or if they get obsessed with it, they're going to be great at it. And you ask them, how'd you learn how to do that? And they're like, I don't remember.
Yeah.
I learned it when I was so yeah, I think surfing is like that too, very much so. And when I see older people in their 30s and 40s, 50s learning to surf, I can't imagine how challenging that would be.
Yeah.
So,
well, luckily they can just go and chat you up if they see you on in the ocean or whatever, right? And get your advice on board. So that's all right. We're very lucky to have you as a resource. So let's we're gonna get deep into like your advice on boards and all that, but just continuing along on the story. So you moved to Florida, and so were you at that age going to make surfing like that big of a part of your life, or how did you go from being there to owning a shop in Brooklyn? And I'm sure that there's an interesting story. There has to be an interesting story there. So
I mean, I laugh. I mean, oh my God, that would be a really long, boring podcast. I won't bore. I'll try and
Cliff
condense
Notes.
that down. But
Yeah.
I never imagined in a million years that I would be doing what I'm doing right now. When I was in college studying sculpture and studying art, and being an artist, it was not something that I ever really aimed at. But things happen to you when you move to New York. Things fall in your lap, and if you choose to allow them to evolve, you sometimes are gifted some special things. And I feel really lucky that that's kind of what happened to me. I didn't aim to have this van at all. Like not even 15 years ago, it wasn't really something that I imagined I'd be doing. But yeah, I always had surfing in my life as something that was very special to me. I never really had any aspirations to be pro or to try and push myself to surf at some incredibly high level. It was always a thing I did for myself, and kind of deeply personal. And skateboarding was that for me too. And skateboarding was, I think, in a lot of ways, a gateway and a bigger influence in terms of me being exposed to kind of an underbelly culture of music and art and kind of everything that's informed who I am. I'm incredibly grateful for that. I also came up in the kind of the heyday of it in the 80s. I think, the skaters that I could like rattle off the top of my brain are probably more important influences to me than any visual artist or philosopher.
Interesting.
Because I think there's a lot of poetry in that, and I think it also for like a lot of kids and a lot of people, young men and women my age, it also attracted like a certain kind of kid, a kid that was like curious, a kid that might be a little bit outside of the norm, maybe a little marginalized, not cool. We kind of found each other in that world. And surfing was like that for, when I was a kid, and then it kind of it got a little bit, I guess, mainstream and a little bit more like kind of bro-y later on. And now it's kind of come back around, and it's sort of, I think, way more inclusive of a lot of people, which I'm grateful for. But yeah, when I went to graduate school in North Carolina, I was studying sculpture, and I hid surfing from people. I've told this story before, but I really didn't want people to know I surfed, because at that time in the 90s, it was kind of like, I call it like the dark ages of surfing. It was sort of dumbed down to a place that I didn't want to associate with. William Finnegan called it being a closet surfer. He and I have talked about this before. Like we
Hmm.
both were embarrassed for like our colleagues and my professors to know that I surfed, because we
Really?
just thought that they would
Yeah.
think we were like degenerate kind of, you
Right.
know, deadbeat kind of people, stoners, whatever you want to call it. And I wanted to be seen as being an intellect, and
Right.
like I wanted to be taken seriously. So there was a turning point in my life where I had this really influential art critic. It's almost, you could almost call him a sociologist, but he's really a critic and an art dealer named Dave Hickey. He had just written a book called Air Guitar, which was and I think he wrote it in 1996 or 95, and it just come out. He's wildly influential to a lot of us. It's a series of essays, and it's a brilliant book, and I recommend it to anybody, artist, non-artist, surfer. It's a fantastic book. And he was a visiting artist or visiting lecturer at I went to UNC Chapel Hill, in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. So he was visiting, and there's waves in North Carolina. They're a couple hours away. Of course, I had my surfboards there, and I had my own studio, and I had my surfboards like in the corner behind some plywood, like hiding them. And I had, I was into longboarding then. I was into the ride everything kind of ethos early on, and I had those boards in the corner. Longboards were 9.5 feet.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're a foot and a half was sticking up past the plywood, but they weren't really drawing that much attention to themselves. And Dave Hickey walked into the studio, and he sat down in this chair and he said, "Listen, I'm not here to fuck you up. I'm not gonna talk to you about your work. And you've got these academics here that are gonna do that, and they're gonna fuck you up enough. Like let's just talk about what you're into. What kind of music are you into?" We're like, oh, we start talking about music, and we start talking about the hardcore and the punk scene, and then as we're talking, he looks over and he sees the surfboard, and he goes, "What are you doing with those surfboards over there?" And I'm just like, "Oh, fuck. No, no, oh no." I'm like, "Not this guy. This guy. I'm trying to impress him." I'm like,
Right.
and I'm like, "Oh, I surf." He goes, "No shit. Where are you from?" And I'm like, "Oh, I grew up in Rhode Island, and I've lived in Florida." He's like, "Oh, no kidding. Oh, that's, I knew a lot of surfers, and that there's a lot of artists that surf. I lived in Venice. I was friends with Ed Ruscha and Billy Al Begston. Chris Burden. They all surfed." And I'm
Wow.
like, "What? Are you kidding me?" Like Raymond Pettibon, yeah, Ray's into surfing. He loves surfing. I'm like, "Are you kidding?" This is 1996.
Wow.
And he proceeded to just basically give me a history lesson of the connection between surfing and the Los Angeles, California, art scene that I had no fucking clue about. I knew that Craig Stesick was, who was like one of our heroes, and responsible for a lot of creativity that a lot of people don't even like understand its origin. But I didn't know about this other world, and he just cracked my skull open. And at the end of it, he goes, "Where is this in your work? Why is
Mm.
it surfing in your work?"
Hmm.
And I went, I said, "Honestly, I've tried to avoid that, And he said, "That's bullshit. It's like, this is one of the most interesting parts of like American culture, post World War II, custom culture, skateboarding, hot rods, surfing, rock and roll, punk rock." And
Yeah.
he's, and I'm like, uh, I'm such an idiot. And he's like, "You've got to figure out a way to let this enter your work, because all this academic fuddy-duddy bullshit,
Mm.
making this mannerist shit is going to get you nowhere. That's not who you are. You got to get back to that."
Wow.
And it was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Mm.
He gave me a license to, allow these like passions in my life to touch. And I was too afraid to ever let that happen before that moment. And I just, needed an elder to come along and kind of bat me over the head.
Mm.
So that really freed me up, man. Like it really, like, also allowed me to see a lot of beautiful connections between like my creative life as an artist, and the way I even thought about riding waves and the kind of equipment and everything. So right around that same time, that's when Litmus came out, Andrew Kidman's film, and um, uh, The Seedling, Thomas Campbell's film. Two really influential films. I think kind of, easy to say those two could be seen as like the major influences on sort of like the surfing renaissance, is what I like to refer to it as, where everybody started to rediscover style and different kinds of boards, and that there wasn't one kind of trajectory in surfing, that you could ride different things and have different feelings and different experiences. And it really wasn't about the, 18 and a half wide, 2.25 thick, elf toe rocker, 6'2" shortboard,
Right.
stomp pad. It was like, there's lots of other ways to surf.
Yeah, and that's what your board shop is all about. That's what Pilgrim's all about. And it was that. So then, yeah, how do you go? I mean, obviously you're heavily influenced by those films, and you're starting to awaken to letting surfing more into your life. And so were you just like, next thing I know, I'm giving up my artist life and I'm just going to open up a surf shop, or how did that all happen?
Never given up my artist life.
Okay.
If when people say I used to be an artist, I'm like, well, you were never an artist.
Hmm.
Because you either are or you're not. And I'm a visual artist. I tell people that all the time. They're like, oh, like you're a designer? And I'm like, no, I'm a visual artist. And this is another part of my life. So I have my studio. I still make things.
Nice.
And
Yep.
I draw every single day. But no, I never gave that up. But I have brought this other thing into my life that, I never would imagined would grow into what this is. But I didn't just grow it by myself. This is, the culmination of and cultivation of a lot of really special relationships and influences. And I feel really lucky to have that. And it's an interesting universe when you have a retail store. It's not like showing your work in a gallery or being in your studio all day by yourself. There's an audience that's pedestrian. Anybody can walk in here, from like the mom and dad from Ohio, that kid just moved to Williamsburg, and they're like, where the hell do you surf around here?
Right.
We field that question about 15 times a day. But Rusty Miller, the 1965 US champion, that like just knocks on the window, like before we're open, wanting to introduce himself,
Wow.
like what, that's the kind of shit that happens. It's like this
Wow.
on a daily basis.
Wow.
So yeah, proximity, I think. But to answer your question, I mean, those films, and really, even maybe more importantly, like the people in them, and the people in the the older generations that they celebrate. I think that was sort of like a confluence of things happening, and it really was documented well, and gave all of us, that people that were really curious about that world, that kind of had like topical kind of exposure and knowledge about it, like a whole entire roadmap to go and discover even more things. Derek Hind and Skip Fry, and even like Barry McGee was in Thomas's movie, and I'd known who Barry was, but I was like, holy shit, Barry McGee is in this movie. Like he surfs. I'm like, oh, this is my people. Oh my God, they're out there. I finally felt like, the way that I was seeing surfing, in the way that I wanted to experience it, was actually not just unique to me. That there's a lot of people that kind of, I think, were searching for a similar thing. So, and that had a lot to do with the boards and the kind of waves.
Well, you do have an incredible eclectic collection of boards. I mean, it makes sense that you're an artist. It's like you have all these works of arts from all these other masters of the craft. So what are some of the, and I could see how somebody, let's say you have that random person that goes into Pilgrim, walks into Pilgrim and looks at this incredibly, this incredible diverse array of different crafts. Like, what do you recommend to them? Because you're going to be looking at everything from like small fishes to longboards. Like how would you guide somebody when they're trying to make this decision? Okay, maybe I don't want to ride your standard thruster. That's not for me. I want to go along a different path. How should they approach it?
Oh man, we were talking about this at length in the water. It was a fun conversation. I always just try to get a sense of like what people are looking for in terms of feelings, because at the end of the day, like surfing is feelings, right? That's what we get from it. You're having an experience, and all your senses are just like lit up. You're kind of out of your head when you're on a wave and you're riding. I mean, a lot of people I know even say that I can't remember my waves, so it's really about the moment. It's about being in the moment. And I ask people all the time, like, well, what are you trying to achieve? Like, what do you want to feel? Like, how do you imagine yourself like riding a wave? Like, or how do you want to ride a wave that's not happening for you now? Um, and what are you riding? What do you have? What do you like about what you have?
Mm.
What don't you like about what you have? Where are you struggling? And what are your aspirations? So we kind of start there. It's really important for me to know what they're riding too. No, it's always important for me to know like what they're riding and like what kind of conditions they're riding it in. But the aspiration thing is important because people are like, I want to ride bigger waves. I'm really kind of um, interested in feeling what getting barreled is. And, like there's, I hear lots of different things. Some people are like, I'm so uninterested in riding anything over chest high. I'm
Yeah.
a 1 to 2 foot person. That's all I want. So it's like trying to feel that part out. That's
Well,
the most important thing.
let's take that. Let's take that because living in the Northeast or in the East Coast, or let's say you're in Europe or a lot of places where you have mostly small, mushy waves. What are what boards are you most excited about for those kinds of waves?
Well, I mean, it depends on, again, like what, like the conditions, like beach breaks, whatever. I mean, I think that there's so many different ways to experience riding a wave. Uh, it changes for me, like, in terms of my mood. Like I'm like, okay, I'm going to throw an 11-foot long, you know, glide, eagle, skip fry eagle on my roof, and I'm going to also throw the 5.1 mini Simmons in the car, and that's what I'm going to the beach with.
Yeah.
And I do that a lot, that combo, because if it's like shoulder high and it's kind of like mid tide and not like top to bottom, the mini sim is going to be so fun, right? And I'm going to ride that, and I'm going to get tired, and then it's going to drain out. It's going to get a little hollow and a little faster. The sections are going to get, a little bigger, and I'm going to take out the eagle, and I'm going to go around those sections, and I'm going to stand there. I'm not going to do shit. I'm just going to stand on the board, and I'm going to feel the wave under my feet, and it's going to be amazing. Um, so that's kind of my approach to surfing. It's like, what do I feel like right now, and what do I want to feel like when I'm out there? And I should have a backup plan. I'm a big fan of going to the beach with more than one board,
Right.
at least two, sometimes even three. If you have them and you have a vehicle, like why would you go with just one, right? And as you know, Van, like our conditions can change like that, or you could see something on a camera and read a report and then get there and it's fool's gold, or it's, way bigger than you thought it was going to be, or it's like the swell interval is like really long and it's powerful and punchy, and you don't want to ride, your mid length. You want to, like, wow, I could ride my little quad fish. It's a feeling thing,
Yeah.
It's like you might get out, you might look at the camera, or you might read the report and roll out to the beach, and the waves might be way bigger than you thought they were going to be, or your perception of it on the camera and the report was totally off, and it's like way smaller.
Yeah.
And if you only go there with the one board, with the one wave that you have in mind that you think is there, and it's not that wave, and you don't have an option, you're kind of stuck riding whatever you brought. Now, there are some boards that you and I know very well are like Swiss Army knives, right? Like, I mean, a mid-length, single fin mid-length or single fin egg, from the 7 foot to 7.6 range is like, that's a Swiss Army knife. You're not going to use a Swiss Army knife to, like, build a set of kitchen cabinets with, but if you got to like fix 2 or 3 screws on it, it's going to work great, right?
Yeah.
It's and that same tool can also like cut your sandwich in half and clean your fingernails, and it's gonna, you know what I mean? Like, so
Yeah.
it's like there's certain boards that really do cover a lot of bases, and they perform really well in certain kinds of waves, and they're really user friendly, and forgiving and intuitive styles of surfboards and designs. And then there's like stuff that gets really specific and requires, a lot of user input and a lot of patience and a lot of getting used to. And I love those kinds of boards. I think that's where the feelings thing comes in. That's where
Yeah.
like as
Well,
it gets
tell us
better.
about, you let me have a ride on, was that a Fantastic Acid? It was like 11.0 or something like that. Like,
Yeah,
tell us
yeah, that
about,
was.
because you've been riding a lot of gliders. Like, tell us about that, because that's definitely on the more unique side of the board, right? And that you're going for a specific feeling there. You know, and I'm sure that a lot of people might look at that and be just not know what they're going to expect from a board like that, even though they might be attracted to it. And they're like, oh, I can just paddle in super early on that kind of board, but they're like, is it a longboard? Is it not? Like, tell us about a board like that.
Yeah, I mean they're really special. The story that I know is that Skip Fry started making that style of board after reading this passage in Tom Blake 1935 Hawaiian Surf Riders book, which is a really incredible book, and I think every surfer should read that book. You can understand the essence of surfing from uh, Duke Hanamuku's perspective and Tom Blake's. It's really beautiful. But Skip read this passage about the Duke paddling out in Waikiki on a big swell on the outer reefs, and on I think a 16-foot long like olo, like a big traditional, like the board of the Hawaiian Kings, and catching this wave, big feathering wave outside, and riding the thing all the way through, and then beating every section and going all, like kind of like traversing the whole entire reef. And apparently he like screamed at the top of his lungs like midway through this like epic long ride, and they ended up naming that spot Papa Nui, which means big board in Hawaiian. And after he read that, he started making these big boards, like 11 footers, and he's getting these big blanks, and he made like a 14 footer for one of his clients, and took it out and rode it, and was just like, oh, just to stand on the thing, and riding it at Sunset Cliffs in San Onofre, I think in Southern California, and just having these blissful moments, just standing there,
Yeah.
and feeling the wave's energy. So I started getting interested in them from reading that, and a lot of other people, were kind of like, at the same time getting into riding those boards. So like about 15 years ago, I think I got my first glider, my first Eagle style board. And the first time I rode it, I was falling. Like, it's not a longboard.
No.
They're really tricky. They have a lot of personality, and they're like a lot of longboards are basically. I mean, we could get into this too. I mean, they're really, arguably, there's two categories of surfboards. There's displacement hulls and there's planing hulls. And the planing hull is, the bottom contours, single into double concave spiral V, that creates lift on a wave. And then there's displacement hulls, which are like, and that so that the planing hull is like a speedboat, right?
Hmm.
you know the the faster it gets going, the more of the boat gets out of the water, the less drag, the more efficient the engine, faster the engine can go. The board's like, planing on top of the water. The displacement hull is like a monohull sailboat. It's like belly, 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 big fins sitting deep in the water, really connecting to the surface of the water. Very, very smooth ride, comfortable, can take a lot of chop, but very hard to maneuver and navigate, slower in that regard, and traveling, like through the water, in the water.
Yeah.
So that's the two styles of boards that we have. The Eagle, like the Skip Fry, is a planing hull. It's like a Bob Simmons. It's like bottom.
Hmm.
Bob Simmons created that planing hull on a surfboard in 1947, and it's the prevailing design. It's the prevailing design on all modern shortboards. It's kind of amazing. Um, the longboard, as we know them, they're displacement hulls.
Right.
There's like belly, flat sections, little V in the tail, nose concave for lift when you're nose riding on some, but for the most part, it's a planing hull. So you travel at the speed of the wave. It's in the wave. It's connected. It's stable. The Eagles are on top of the water, and they haul ass, and they take a lot of nuance and kind of experience to figure out how to turn well. So I loved the challenge of them, but what I loved more than that was like getting the wave figuring out how to find trim and high line and just stand there, and you're feeling all the energy of this wave, this little wave. It could be like knee high, and you're going 1,000 miles an hour, and that can't happen on any other surfboard.
Mm.
It's really special. Um, so I got addicted to that, and I'll surf days that no one will be out, or I'll find waves that people don't want to surf because they section too much, but I can go around them, and um, it just kind of opens up a lot of possibilities, and I think it also kind of gives you a new perspective on the wave dynamic, and the mechanic of a wave, the mechanics of a wave.
Yeah, exactly. It sounds like the perfect board for Northeast small days. You enjoy going 100 miles an hour on a 1 foot wave and enjoying that sensation.
Yeah, and they really turn on when the waves are good too, which is fun. The big board thing is a interesting new kind of. It's not new. It's been around for a long time, but I see more and more people kind of uh, figuring it out. And there's also kind of an etiquette that goes along with it, because yes, it is easy to catch waves on those boards. Obviously, they're big, but they are not easy to surf. So I never recommend them to people who are like kind of intermediate. I think it's good for them to maybe try one out and cut their teeth on it, but it can be dangerous,
Right.
and then you get the wrong person with the wrong kind of state of mind riding them, and they're just taking every wave. So, um, yeah, it involves some discipline, I
Yeah,
think, and self restraint.
that makes sense. Well, so you're talking about displacement holes versus planing boards that plane. Like, where do I remember I saw some Ellis Erickson's boards in your shop. Where do these edge boards fit? Are they still? Yeah, where do they fit? How would you describe them?
I think the edge boards are really unique. This is a design that George Greenough was evolving in the 70s. And they're really complicated, and they take a tremendous amount of work to get right. The amount of time in the shaping is intense. It's basically like shaping two surfboards in one, because the way the edge board is designed is there's a section in the middle of the bottom of the board that has um, bottom contours, single concave, sometimes single into double concave, and then it hits an edge that's about 2 inches in from the rails. It depends. It could be less, or it could be more, depending on the shaper and the design of the board. Um, and it has a transition down to a regular kind of almost 50-50 foiled rail that you would see on a pretty traditional longboard or mid-length or something. And the idea is that you have the planing hull feelings and characteristic on the very bottom of the board that you would be using when you would be driving and generating speed, the rise and fall thing that you do on a wave to project yourself to get speed when the board is small, right? Like you're no longer, the board's small enough where it's not completely displacing your weight. You have to actually engage the rail and the fin and make it generate speed. So those bottom contours are what give the board lift and help boards carry speed and plane. Um, so you have that in the middle of those boards, and then on the rail you have a rail that you would find on like a displacement hull. That's a foil, like an airplane wing, that gets a lot of grip and a lot of hold. So I think what Greenough and I'm not an expert in terms of making these things. I've looked at a lot of them, but I think if you talk to like Andrew Kidman, Ellis Erickson, Mark Andrini, there's a bunch of people making the boards that have direct tutelage and relationships to George Greenough. I think what they would say is, you kind of getting best of both worlds. You're getting this board that has that drive and that speed, but then when you put it on rail, you have that foil rail that'll allow to really grip and carry speed through turns, and not shed it off. Um, and they work really well. And part of the thinking is that they never really took root because they're too difficult to make,
Yeah.
probably too expensive. So now they're kind of coming back into the fold, and we have like our local shaper, Christopher Thomas, St. Christopher Surfboards. He's completely dedicated himself to the design, and he's making some really beautiful boards that are hyper functional.
Yeah,
Um,
totally. It's interesting because I looked at those and the design seems, super fascinating, but you're almost like, does that actually work? Does that actually improve performance? But our mutual friend Aaron from King's Glassing, he was working with a shaper up in Rhode Island, and he sent us like a video of him doing a turn on one of them, and we were just like, holy crap. Like we were just blown away. We're like, wait, is this him? Because he just had so much speed, and it just carried that speed throughout the entire turn. We were just blown away, and it was like, oh, there definitely is something to it. So
yeah,
uh,
no, yeah, they're definitely a proven design, and I think it is about feelings, right? Like I go back to this all the time. It's like I have feelings on boards. I have like sessions, and I'm just out there and I'm feeling like $1 million, and then I see photos or video. I'm like, oh no, that can't be that turn. That turn, I banned like a 10-foot spray. I was so vertical on the face. That's definitely. Oh no, that's the turn. Or like, oh, I was so slotted. I saw the lip go over my shoulder. I was so barreled, and then you see the clip, and you're like, you're in the pocket. I mean,
yeah,
so I guess it's like get like what you feel and what you might see like recorded sometimes like don't really match, and I actually hate seeing footage of myself surfing. I don't like it. uh, I'd rather just be in the moment, have try to access some of those snapshots in my mind if I
right,
can.
right. Well, what other shapers are you really excited about that you're going to have in the shop?
Well, we're I mean, that's an interesting question. I mean, I get excited about everybody we have. I mean, that's kind of a lame answer, but I really do. Like, if everyone has their own special kind of sauce that they have invented and put into the boards that they shape, the shapers that we carry. That's what excites me about having the array of stuff that we have, and there's so many good shapers out there, and I wish I could accommodate everybody. Honestly, there's just too many. There's a lot that I'm interested in, and I have crazy respect for people that we don't have on the racks, and it's not because I don't think they're good. It's just because we don't have enough room, and just we can't sell that many boards. So,
Right.
um, but there's the stuff, the people that I'm really excited about. Excited about Rachel Lord, who's shaping right now in our residency. Her boards are incredible, and she's kind of this under the radar, low key surfer shaper. Rides longboards beautifully, knee boards beautifully, and has a real keen interest in design and history, and is a real student of all of it. So I'm psyched to have her boards in the shop. We have Ellis. Obviously, he's like a little brother to me, and we have Bo Foster coming out next month, and Bo's a incredible young underground surfer shaper. I guess the thing I'm just thinking it now, so I'm saying it now. Some of my favorite people are really like have this beautiful balance of being great surfers with great style and shapers, and
Mhm.
they're connecting what they can do out on a wave back to the board, and they make boards that are very high performance, a lot of them, and they make boards that are way more user friendly and intuitive, um, and I think they are able to work through the design problem because they can go and get the feedback that they need because their level of surfing is so high. So yeah, I think those are some of my favorite surfers. Thomas Beckson is such an incredibly talented longboarder. Like when you watch him surf, he's got all these great people like Harrison Roach, like Karina Razunko surfing for him. So he's getting all this feedback from people, and his
Yeah.
boards just get better and better. And he makes really beautiful longboards that work great in lots of different conditions. So there are people like that. Ryan Birch, I guess I can announce it on your podcast, but we haven't announced it yet. But he's going to be out here in the fall doing a residency for a month. So we're really excited
Wow.
about having him out. He's going to come out with his family, and his partner Lukey is a friend, amazing photographer, and really cool person. So um, who Alex Lopez is going to be out here. Christian Beamish is going to come back out at some point in shape. So yeah, our residency thing is this whole other component and kind of a new facet to what we do. And one of the things that I'm really excited about is having those people here and having our customers and having our community meet them and interact with them, and be able to ask them questions and have a dialogue. Because that's the thing we have a lot of local shapers, Charles Mansell, Mark Petroselli, lots of Joe Falcone, Jimmy from Poem, Andrew from Storyteller. I'm going to miss people. Drew at Kings. There's so many great young shapers just in our zone that are doing great work and are evolving. And to bring people out from the West Coast, Australia, Hawaii, France, like Tristan from Fantastic Acid, and have interactions with everybody, share technique, share and have dialogue around design and concepts that they're working on. It's really exciting for me because I just get to sit back and watch all this,
Yeah.
this exchange going on, and I think it's going to hopefully enrich like what we do and make better surfboards for people, get people more excited about designs, and also give people a little insight into like how special like a surfboard shaping is and how it's akin to like a folk craft and a folk tradition and vernacular design. I mean, it's really special. It's a master to apprentice kind of relationship. People like DIY it and learn on their own and try and solve problems. The best designs, Van, in surfboard, the evolution of the surfboard happened in like people's backyards and in their garages.
Yeah.
It's wild to think about. The Bonzer, the first 3-fin board, those guys, the Campbell brothers, father wouldn't buy them building material, wouldn't buy them a surfboard, but would buy them the materials to make their own. It was also kind of like an aviation kind of like buff and nerd, and gave them the idea to put some stabilizer wings on their boards to help them from spinning out in the punchy waves in Oxnard. And that was the Bonzer. They did that when they were teenagers in 1973.
That was before thrusters. That was the first thruster. I mean, really.
That was the first thruster, man.
Yeah.
And then same thing with Steve Liss and his kneeboard, like trying to make a kneeboard work better and bigger, more powerful, more vertical surf. And he traced his fins, kneeling down on a piece of cardboard and kind of saw the swallowtail shape and made a big wave kneeboard by making basically 2 pintails with the fins, kind of outboard on the rail. So his fins wouldn't drag off the back of the board, on a bigger wave. It's like, mind blowing to me. It wasn't done in a lab. It wasn't done, by some industrial designer. It's done by people trying to solve a design problem. So that gets me really jazzed to think about, being just a facilitator and letting exchange and dialogue and knowledge happen.
Yeah, it goes back to that, just facilitating community, and you're kind of building this special microcosm of just creatives in the surfboard space that are all intermingling and hopefully going to create some magic. So that's pretty cool. And I actually did want to ask about your film as well, because, I'm seeing a similar thread in terms of the way you approach things. Tell us a little bit about your film that you made.
I mean, we made this film. It came out in 2019, called Self Discovery for Social Survival. It's a mouthful, and everybody told me not to call it that. we said no, we have to. And every time I have to say it, I'm like, oh yeah, we should have called it something. We call it SDSS.
I mean, it's an amazing film, though. Everybody needs to watch it. The concept is brilliant.
And I appreciate it. I mean, there's definitely surf films out there that have uh, much like more and dynamic surfing. But the concept for the film is that we were going to take these 3 trips to the 3 major oceans with 3 different groups of what I think are really special kind of um, open-minded surfers and 3 bands um, that also were people who surfed and take these journeys, take these pilgrimages, these adventures. And we had 3 weeks, and whatever we got in 3 weeks is what we got. And after we got back from those trips, the musicians were kind of instructed to go right into the studio immediately and start rehearsing, writing, and recording songs that were inspired by the trip that we all just had together and the surfing that went on and the interactions out of the water. And then hand us back the master tracks, which we edited each, specific sequence to. So it was a long process, but the idea was that the creativity in it was really a series of things influencing one another, and the whole thing was dependent on everybody's participation and also reactions to one another. So uh, it was took a while. There's a lot of steps in that, but it was really exciting. We were able to get Jonas Mekas, who's this legendary avant-garde filmmaker who started the Anthology Film Archive, and was wildly influential and important in the cinema and art and cinematic and art world scene in New York and everywhere really, to narrate it, which was, and then Jamie Brisick wrote those narrations, and was one of the people on the trip that we took to the Maldives. And then we had these incredible animators, Robert Beatty and Bailey Elder, do the graphics in the animation for it. And then we went with the Alalas to Mexico, Peking Lights to the Maldives, and Andrew Van Weingarten and Conan Moccasin to Iceland. So it was the idea was that we didn't have any predetermined sort of script. There's like, here are the elements, here's the ingredients, we're putting them together, and everyone's responsible for making this thing happen, but we don't know what that's going to be. I didn't tell anybody how to surf. I didn't tell anybody what to play. I didn't tell anybody like what board to ride. I didn't tell anyone how long to surf. I was not. My job as a director was to make sure everybody got where they needed to be, and give them the artistic, creative freedom to do what they wanted to do.
Yeah. Did you pair specific surfers with specific musicians, thinking they'd be a good combination, or how did you pick that? Yeah.
Yes, that was my job, was to kind of think about the personalities, and these were all people that I've known, that I've met and lucky and fortunate enough to get to know, and put them together, and knowing that these personalities they're gonna make something magical happen. And luckily, knock on wood, for all of us, it really kind of turned out that way.
Yeah. So could you tell us which surfers you picked for which musicians in which specific place? Like, what was your thought process? Like, why did I pick Stephanie Gilmore for this, or why did I pick Ryan Birch for that? Like, what was some of your thought process there?
Yeah, no, I think that the idea was thinking about their personalities and kind of the landscape and the waves that we were going to be riding. I'd never been to Iceland, but I'd been to the Maldives and I'd been to Mexico, where we shot. Iceland was like another planet. So, like when I was thinking about, I'll just use Ryan Birch and Steph as examples. Ryan, to me, is my personal opinion, he's the greatest surfer shaper I think ever, honestly. His skills as a surfer and his skills as a shaper, I don't think anyone has done it like that. I think about Mark Richards winning world championships riding boards that he shaped. That's radical. He's up there. But Ryan can ride, and I witnessed this. He can ride a longboard so beautifully with so much magical, unrehearsed personal style that would make anybody want to ride a longboard. And then the next morning go and surf, 3-foot overhead, kegging, cracking beach breaks and find barrels all over the place just because he's so in tune with waves and the knowledge of the ocean, because he's just like, it's a sixth sense to him. And just do that so effortlessly and beautifully and with so much power. And they're so different, those kinds of surfing and a wave approach, and the waves are so different, and it's so effortless and it's so beautiful to watch. It's just absolutely magical. So when we went to Mexico, we had this long meandering kind of left point wave that was definitely like a longboard wave. And then there's an hour away up the coast was this kind of semi-secret, like legendary big wave spot, like kegging beach break. And I found out that it was working. So I thought, I got to bring people who can ride both kinds of waves. And Ryan, to me, was the ultimate. So
Right.
that was like a choice. And the band that came with us to Mexico was the Alalas. And the Alalas have this really unique sound, but it sounds like it comes from another time, but it's now. And it feels like super influenced by like the music that came out of Southern California in the 60s and 70s. And it's dusty and it's meandering and it's like kind of like hypnotic, in a way. And that's kind of the way that part of Mexico feels to me. So it was like, a very easy marriage. And those guys, those guys are, when they came down there, it's like they just it was like a puzzle piece. They just they would fit right in perfectly, and everybody loved being around each other. So that was another reason. I just knew that crowd was going to get along great. And then Steph going to Iceland, I just felt like was such an insane contrast to like who she is and where she comes from, but also a real compliment to who she is and where she comes from, because we all know Steph is, she's probably one of my she's top 3 favorite surfers of all time. Probably, she's definitely my favorite high performance surfer.
Yeah.
More than any, I don't even think about it in terms of gender. She just surfs at such a high level with so much style and grace. It's also just incredibly beautiful to watch. But I thought, Iceland is such a kind of foreboding place to surf because it's so cold and the conditions change so quickly. But I had this feeling that when she would get into that environment, she would be the one person that could take something that might be mediocre and make it look fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think all the people that were on that trip were in my mind were that way. But I also loved the idea, because of that feeling I have, that she's just one of the best surfers, period. Doesn't matter if she's a woman or a man or whatever. It's like she is just a fantastic surfer. I thought, one of the cool things about the winter wetsuit is it kind of neutralizes people's gender identity, right? Like if you're looking from afar, you don't know if it's a woman or a man surfing. And I thought that would be kind of interesting. If you didn't know it was her, what would you assume? And that kind of came out. It was kind of cool.
Yeah.
She and Bo Foster are kind of like the same kind of like wiry build. And editing, I was like, who was that? And I'm trying to like look at their boards and I had to like seriously like try and figure it out a few times. I thought that was kind of cool and special, but that was the reason for bringing her there, is that I knew that she would thrive in a challenging environment like that. And she was so up for it. And she could go anywhere.
Yeah,
She'd never
for
come
sure.
to Iceland with us, you know. So it was a real gift. I thought that was really cool. And she's also really curious and loves music. She's a great musician, and she's fascinated with Conan Moccasin and Andrew, and they played music together. You know, there was a lot of bonding there. And and her sister Whitney came, and her sister's Whitney's like been kind of like her manager for a long time. I think for most of her career, maybe all of it. Um, and Whitney was so awesome and kind of added this whole other incredible dynamic to the trip. And all these friendships were kind of forged each trip.
That's epic.
Everyone kind of bonded, the people that weren't super close. So that was a great success for us. And, and then the film, I think the soundtrack is kind of special.
Oh man, it was amazing.
I mean, that might be the most successful part of the whole thing.
No, the
Seriously.
surfing was amazing too. I mean, I remember that. I loved both of those sections. I love the section with the Creed and Maldives as well. I think that was Peaking Lights. It was just like this
Yeah.
really joyful, fun, exuberant kind of feel to it. That was so good as well. Like,
Yeah. That was it. So dusty kind of, old 60s, Southern California, um, California and Mexico are the same kind of the same chunk of earth. And I felt like, oh, that just makes sense for them to be there. Maldives was like, when you're in the Maldives, you feel like you're in another world. It's like its own weird planet, and you're surfing in Windex. It's like bizarre and amazing. And Aaron Coys and his wife, Peaking Lights, their music is kind of outer worldly and dubby and weird, and it's like you're on a spaceship, and it's kind of like we're on this boat, and that's kind of what
yeah,
I was hoping would come out. And he made beautiful, beautiful stuff for that. And then Iceland is like this crazy, dark, mysterious, um, magical, mystical place. And Conan and Andrew are that. Um,
very true.
and they I had no idea what they were going to do, man. I had no idea what they were going to make. And I think I was surprised every time I got demos. I was like, whoa.
So cool.
Keith Abramson, who's the A&R person at Mexican Summer, was my partner on making that film. He was just over the moon. Like, it was so fun to make that film. I'd love to do something like it again, but it's definitely not a commercially viable thing.
Yeah,
It'll never make money.
no, I made a film, an art film back in the day, and it was so much work and just lighting a bunch of money on fire, definitely. But
Yeah, but it lives in the world, right?
yeah,
And that's what's so beautiful about making anything is like, you have your intentions when you make something, and then you put it out into the world, and it's no longer yours, right? It belongs to everyone else now, and people interpret that, and it might, I don't know if it's influenced anybody. I have no idea, but it might give somebody something, and that's special. I mean, that's the reason to do it.
Well, I definitely recommend people check it out. I mean, can people still find it? I saw that there's a trailer on YouTube, but where can people find the full film?
Full film is like Apple TV, and I think, I mean, sadly, Amazon, Amazon, I think sells it. I think the streaming platforms have it. Yeah.
Okay, good. People should definitely check it out. It's super fun. It's beautiful. Music is amazing. Bringing it back to surfing, though, like,
thanks, man.
did you spent so much time around these incredible surfers. Like, what did you learn watching Brian Birch or Stephanie Gilmore in the water or whoever?
I learned that I'll never surf like them. There's absolutely no hope. Oh man, what did I mean?
Or is it just they're so beyond in a different realm that you're like, there's nothing I can learn from that? But I don't know. Is there anything that you could extract and use it to improve your own surfing or anybody that's listening?
Yeah, like watching. Well, okay, I'll try and give my impressions of both people. What they both do really well is they both really, like, they wait for the wave to provide them with the opportunity. They don't they don't try and force opportunity on the wave. Does that make sense?
Interesting. I like that. Okay.
When you watch Steph surf, when Steph does something, she knows exactly where she's so in tune, and it's because of just she's an incredible athlete, but she's also like she has this emotional intelligence, and so does Ryan. I think that's the thing that is required to really surf well, and they are looking at a piece of a wave, knowing like I don't have to force this right now. It's not the time. I'm in a high line because I'm going to wait for it to open up down there because I can tell, I can feel, or I have the experience and the intuition to know that that's what's going to happen. So they're not forcing or rushing movements, even with their own body language. Their body language is amazing. Where their hands are when they're doing a turn, where they're looking, and that stuff is like, that's hard to train. I mean, CJ Nelson told me that he would do something weird with his hand. Like he would kind of curl his fingers up when he would longboard, when he was like using his back arm as like a rudder. We all do that, when we're surfing, whoop, and there's the roll up the windows guy, there's like people that do funny things with their hands,
right. Yeah.
And CJ said he was like,
the claw comes out.
Like, said that he taped his fingers together so he could still paddle, but it would force him to keep them from clinching. So it would look better, and I was like, wow, like there's that level of intention. Sometimes it's kind of mind blowing, but yeah, Ryan and Steph both have like a unique intuition. And I would study and watch, like even when Ryan would longboard, like how he would like do these really amazing fades, like drop in, left, go right, and just whip the board around. And he would whip it around, and then he would just stand in the middle of the board, just like feet touching, and just stand there. Not yet. Oh, okay, now go. It wasn't like he was trying to do this this big kind of forced movement where he would like do that left, go right fade and then run right to the nose. That's kind of the move. That's why you see people do that a lot. He was like, it was more nuanced, but what I observed is that they really are like letting opportunities, like they're waiting for the opportunity. They're not forcing stuff. They're not forcing their way up the face. They're not forcing the turn just to get the turn in. If that's not the place to do the turn, you're not going to be able to rotate right. You're going to end up just doing a check. Then they'll do something way more graceful. That's kind of more respectful and more in tune with the wave, and wait for that moment to happen instead of pushing it.
Right. That makes
hopefully that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. And it makes sense why, when you watch them, you're just like, they look incredibly graceful because they're using the energy of the wave. They're letting the wave kind of dictate their movement instead of imposing their own will on the wave. And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, so how do you think about style? I mean, having seen, all these, from all the way back in the 80s when you're watching all these surfers till now, there's been an evolution. And you've also seen all these different styles of surfing as well. How do you think about style, and how do you define good style?
Oh, that's a good style to me is unrehearsed. Forced and kind of rehearsed style is, like, to me personally, in my opinion, it's hard to watch. I really don't like the Matador stuff. So like here I am on my longboard, like highlining, and I'm going, okay, but that's almost like learned behavior. I think when it's somebody that's just kind of really like in tune with themselves and in the moment, and they're maybe less self-conscious of that stuff. It's more of their intuition. I think that always looks better.
Yeah.
I like people that try things that have a lot of flair too. I'm not disparaging like people that are pushing boundaries with like how they approach wave riding. But I think when it's unrehearsed, when it's like, okay, now I'm gonna I don't know, like do a soul arch, just because like that looks cool. That's for the picture or whatever.
Right.
When it's like really somebody in the moment, out of their head, I love that surfing, that kind of surfing.
Yeah, it calls to mind that one, Ryan Burchin's Psychic Migrations when he's riding that shaped rainbow fish, and he goes to the top of the wave and he just does this like look back and kind of kicks his leg out. That just looks like he's like, oh my god, I'm just having so much fun. I'm just gonna look at the wave. It's just magical.
And you could tell there's nothing about that looked like he practiced any of that shit.
Yeah,
he was just like fucking in the moment, like, and that's Ryan Thomas's film, and like, I mean, I think he probably captured some of the best surfing ever in a film. That's probably that rainbow fish sequence is one of my favorite sequences ever in a surf film.
Mine too.
I could watch it. I never get bored watching that.
It's magical. Yeah,
that's absolutely insane. But yeah, and unrehearsed, and he's also doing stuff that you're like, oh my god, like how did he come off the bottom, hit the lip like that, and then like end up at the bottom of the wave doing a bottom turn again behind the lip, like how is he?
It's crazy.
I mean, it was so hard to even like relate to it.
Yeah, it's insane.
And yeah, no, it's great surfing.
All right, we got to work towards ending up here, but I got two last questions for you. If you had to surf the same wave for the rest of your life, what wave would you surf? And what would the conditions be like? What would it be like?
Wow, that's rough. Well,
don't tell me Rockaway. Don't tell me 1 to 2 foot Rockaway. I'm not going to believe you.
No, I would be lying. I mean, there are certain waves that have the reputation that they have because of they're so special. I mean, I've surfed Malibu a lot in my lifetime, and I've had some of the most like magical waves there. They're not the biggest, or the hollowest, but like in terms of variety, in terms of like being able to ride any kind of board, and I'm a regular foot, and I mean I love surfing backside too, so it's kind of like it'd be sad not to surf backside for the rest of my life, but I think I could deal with it if I had
if you had a perfect wave. Yep.
Malibu, but I probably would say Malibu.
All right.
Maybe if I could live in New York and surf Malibu every day, that would be my dream.
I'm stuck in that same boat. I'm like, I love New York, but yeah, I need a perfect wave here. All right, if you were stranded on a desert island, what board would you bring? What board would you ride?
This is the desert island board question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Man. I mean, I think that changes every 5 years, man. The volume, the length, everything. Man. I would probably. Damn you, man. I put me on the spot. Well, okay. It would either be it would fuck me. I want to say so many things. I like too many surfboards.
I know, you got to pick one. It could just be your board of the moment. Your board of the moment.
One of the best. Fuck, man. One of the best eggs. I would bring an egg. I would bring a 7-1 egg, and I'm going to claim it right now that the best egg that I've ever ridden in my life is the 7-1 Ryan Birch. And there's no bells or whistles. There's no, chine rail and fucking, single into double concave with, an S deck and blah, blah, blah. It is a really simple shape, but it is the outline and the rail and what the subtle things in the bottom. It's such an incredible surfboard. So I think, and it works in a lot of different conditions. So I think And I mean, I would the close second to that would be a skip fry longfish,
All right, got it. And what is the Rhine Birch egg? What's the fin setup?
single fin.
Single fin. All right.
There's something about a single fin for me, like, and I say it to a lot of people. There, you're truly getting the essence of the plan shape, the rail, and fin kind of, being equally important in the movements. I think it really improves a lot of people's surfing. A lot of my friends that I knew for many years that were like bro hammer shortboarders. That's it. Thruster, 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 thruster. And no matter what the conditions, they're on a thruster. They've got all different kinds, but that's what they're riding. And after a while, like their surfing style, you would notice like they start surfing off the back of the board, off the fins a lot, and not using their rails in cutbacks as much. Kind of like doing that kind of flicky thing where they're pulling their front foot off the deck and pushing that back foot and getting rail line out of the water just so they can fan the spray, but they're not carrying their speed through the turn and not surfing very gracefully and kind of missing sections and et cetera, et cetera. And some of them would get like mid lengths or get like a 6-6 egg or single fin, and you'd start to see it smooth out their surfing. You start to see them go, oh, like now I'm like rising and falling and I'm using the rail more. When I do a turn, I have to use the rail more.
Mm-hmm.
And when they bring that back to the shortboard, it's like, whoa, like new dimension opened. Same thing with the fish too. I think the fish also kind of like gives people that are coming off the 3-fin thruster high performance kind of space, that gives them this opportunity to really understand what that outboard fin does and the drive you can get from it. You have to rely on it more. So I do think riding lots of different kinds of boards as your skill improves. And I'm a slightly above average surfer. I'm like, I'm not a pro. I don't describe the way I surf as ripping. Um, um, but I see things, and I've been around it enough to like recognize some stuff in other people's surfing and in my own. And I think like at the end of the day, it's like it's just kind of what you want from it. It's a deeply personal thing. And if you want to go out there and shred, and you think you're shredding and you're having fun, that's great, But some of my friends, when they're out there, this is in the past, a lot of them have evolved, but when it's like waist high and they're on a 510 potato chip thruster, I'm like, if you're not catching waves, you are not surfing, period.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
So I'm always trying to like help people get to a place where it's like, try and feel something different. I know you love that board, and I know you love surfing it when it's head high, and you love getting barreled on it. And yes, you surf that very well when the waves are right, but the waves aren't right for that board. So, you're undergunned.
Yeah.
This is the stuff that I end up, I think, like getting into lots of conversations and deeper conversations with customers and friends who are looking, for an answer to like what they're missing in their quiver. And that's kind of your whole thing with this podcast, right?
Yeah. I'm just trying to help people out.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, how should people find out more about you? And you got your social media accounts, but like just tell people how they can get a hold of you, find your social media and all that.
Oh, Pilgrim Surf Supply is the Instagram handle. That's probably the easiest way to kind of get an insight into what we do and who we are. The shop is obviously, physical shop is in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. We have a lot of boards here. There's a lot of stuff. It's like a library of surfboards in a way. And I love it when people come in just to feel things and ask a million questions about why a certain board has this certain feature. And I love doing that. So if anyone ever wants to come over here and kick tires, and it's never, we don't make money selling surfboards. It's a very low margin thing. So for me, I never want to force or never would force a board on somebody that wasn't right. So I like just talking to people about it. And then also yeah, I mean, joining our newsletter is kind of a good thing because we do a lot of events, as you pointed out, Van, and some of them are quite significant culturally, like having like Carissa Moore here, or having Bill Finnegan do a reading of Barbarian Days, or having a movie night with a filmmaker. And, that happens, multiple times a month in the shop. We have music performances. It varies. It's not just about surfing too. So
Yeah,
um,
and I would say, I meet, surfers in New York all the time, and people are always like, "Oh, well, it's so hard." Like, they're sometimes newer surfers, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I don't know how to meet other surfers. Like, it doesn't feel
yeah.
like there's a community." I'm like, "That's weird to me because I feel like the New York surf community is really this kind of close, tight knit thing." And I think,
Mhm.
the events that you throw are a big kind of locus of all of that. So, anybody that's listening to this, if you're in New York, you should definitely come by and swing by because it's always a ton of fun. All right,
No, I
well,
love
thanks.
meeting new people. But yeah. No, thank you for that, Van.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
All right, Chris. Well, thanks for joining. This was a pleasure.
Likewise, buddy. Thank you.
All
See you in
right.
the water. Let's ride some big boards.